Hello, your friendly neighborhood host here, JT Wheatley, back for another episode of the History of Comics podcast. This time, part 2 of the History of Spider-Man. When we last left off, we had just gotten into Spider-Man's origin and his creation, and as he started to branch not only in the comic books, but merchandising success as well, with a popular cartoon and even some record albums. And now he finally made his jump to live-action television, but not quite in the way most superheroes would do it. In 1975, Spider-Man and Friends was released with Fantastic Four and the Hulk, and later released in 1977 to tie in with the Electric Company. While in The Amazing Spider-Man number 30, the Spider-Mobile was introduced on March 1974. Writer Jerry Conway did this on the orders of Stan Lee, despite arguing that the Spider-Man wouldn't need a car to begin with since he was a web-slinger. However, it was meant to be a tie-in with a toy license who was producing the vehicle, so Conway followed his orders. It only lasted until issue number 141, though, as even readers noticed how ridiculous it was. In 1974, Akaz Hamway International released the official Spider-Man buggy, while back in 1971, Mego did 8-inch dolls of various action figures, with Spider-Man being the most popular. They would later add the Green Goblin and the Lizard in 1974, and then in 1976, they added the Spider Car. Once again, why is he in the car? Who knows? Of interesting note, the toys were released alongside DC Heroes and Tarzan, as Mego had their license as well. Sadly, the company would go bankrupt in 1982, but fans still have a fond memory of these classic toys. The licensing exploiting for Spider-Man continued as Colorforms, Hallmark, Hasbro, Heinz, Hot Wheels, Milton Bradley, and Pez all got into the action, creating everything from lunchboxes, viewfinders, cars, and so forth. In 1974, John Romita Sr. did covers in mini comics for Aurora Models. Hudson Vitamins, which was owned by Marvel's then parent company Candence, even produced Spider-Man vitamins to compete with the Flintstones vitamins. Most importantly, though, Fruit of the Loom released a Spider-Man Underoos, the classic kids' wear line that was advertised on TV as the underwear that is fun to wear. The clothing line remains popular even today and has been reissued numerous times over the years with modern updates to the design. And of course, when Iron Man yells out Underoos to let you know that Spider-Man's coming in Captain America Civil War, we all know what that's a reference to. Another fun license was the Spider-Man Reading Motivation Kit by McGraw-Hill Publishing Company, which featured story cards illustrated by Win Mortimer, along with audio tapes, film strips, and a teacher's guide, while Avalon produced arts and crafts items from chalkboards and drawing machines. In 1978, Simon & Schuster published Mayhem in Manhattan by Len Wein and Marv Wolfman under the Pocketbooks imprint, which was followed up by Crime Campaign and Murder Moon, which also featured The Incredible Hulk, both of which were written by Paul Kupperberg. That was part of a larger license of 11 Marvel novels in general, featuring beautiful covers by Bob Larkin. Simon & Schuster had previously published Origins of Marvel Comics by Stan Lee in 1974, which had a painted cover by John Romita Sr. The book included Amazing Fantasy number 15 and Amazing Spider-Man number 72, which had the tale Rocked by the Shocker. In 1979, Amazing Spider-Man was collected into 6 issues covering various themes, from the debut of Mary Jane to the Green Goblin drug trilogy. This was part of Simon & Schuster's larger push to bring trades to the market. They also published A Contract with God by Will Eisner in 1978, and ventured into calendars as well, with the first Mighty Marvel calendar in 1975, featuring various Marvel characters, including Spider-Man, with artwork by John Romita Sr., Jack Kirby, and Jill Kane. Merchandising and licensing continued as Southland 7-Eleven released a Spider-Man Slurpee Cup at their stores in 1975, with art by John Romita Sr., that retold Spider-Man's origin of all things. And then they released glasses in 1977, which also featured the Green Goblin, the Lizard, Dr. Octopus, the Sandman, and Kraven the Hunter. So even on road trips, you couldn't escape Spider-Man. Foom, which stood for Friends of Old Marvel, was a magazine which featured Spider-Man on the back cover by Jim Stronenko, that was released in spring of 1973. It was meant to be a club magazine for fans, meant to follow up the canceled Marvel Mania Club a few years back, with the first issue offering them the ability to write Marvel for a new character and story ideas. The initial membership package included a 1-year subscription to the magazine, a Stronenko poster of the Marvel characters, a gold membership card, 6 stickers, and a mailing envelope sporting a Stronenko version of the Hulk. For issue number 3, Stronenko put Spider-Man on the cover. The magazine would last until issue number 22, with Spider-Man back on the cover again, while Foom itself remains Marvel's longest-running professional club. Then Spider-Man made his official live-action debut on October 21st, 1974, premiering on the Electric Company PBS children's program titled Spidey Meets the Spoiler, which was narrated by future Oscar winner and host of the show Morgan Freeman. Spider-Man never spoke in the series, but instead used word balloons, while Marvel created a comic book tie-in, Spidey Super Stories, which was mentioned before. That series lasted from October 1974 to March of 1982, ultimately lasting for 57 issues. A further move to live action was the Amazing Spider-Man TV series by Columbia Pictures TV, which aired on CBS on September 14th, 1977. This was part of a larger push by Marvel to get their characters on TV, with the classic Incredible Hulk TV series also premiering that year, while Doctor Strange and Captain America got made for TV movies in 1978 and 1979 respectively. For Spider-Man, another miniseries, The Deadly Dust, aired on April 5th to the 12th on 1978. The show starred Nicholas Hammond as Peter Parker Spider-Man, with Robert F. Simon playing J. Jonah Jameson. The ratings were high, thus the series received 3 more episodes the first year, along with 6 episodes for the second year. It would also end up with a final 2-hour movie, The Chinese Web, on July 6, 1979, which featured future Cheer star Ted Danson in a minor role. However, comic book fans hated it, as did Stan Lee, noting that the lack of any of Spider-Man's other characters or villains. Most egregious, Spider-Man's origin was undercut with not even including the death of Uncle Ben, essential to any Spidey story. It didn't help that a different actor played Aunt May with each episode, further showing how little the showrunners thought of that character as well. Overseas, though, another live-action Spider-Man made his debut in Japan in 1978 when Toei produced 41 episodes of Spider-Man. It came about when Marvel licensed the Shogun Warriors to be adapted as an American comic book from Toei as part of a larger 3-year license agreement that allowed each company to adapt the other's property in any way they chose. For Toei's Spider-Man series, it starred Tokuya Yoshishiro, who was a motorcycle racing champion who witnesses a spaceship falling to Earth, later learning it's called the Marveler. His father, Dr. Hiroshi Yoshishiro, investigates to learn of a pending alien invasion, only to be killed by the Tetsujuji Dan, the Steel Cross Squad, an organization of aliens bent on making sure the said invasion happens. Takua is also nearly killed, but only saved by the alien Galia from the Spider Star, who grants him spider powers and the Marveler that could change into a giant robot, mecha in Japan, called Leopardon, which stood at 200 feet and was 20,000 tons. Now, as Spider-Man, he fights a one-man war against the Steel Cross Squad and their leader, the half-cyborg monster Kaijo, Dr. Monster, who is able to turn animals into monsters while assisted by the villainous Amazonas. Despite being only remotely based on Spider-Man, Stan Lee reportedly liked it and the action, especially how he jumped around when fighting the villains. Today, the series is a cult classic worldwide, and is noted for being the first live-action mecha series in Japan, i.e. one with the giant robot. However, due to a licensing agreement expiring between Marvel and Toei, the show was in limbo, as it contained creations from both companies, thus it couldn't be rebroadcast by either without the other's permission. Finally, Toei renegotiated with Marvel to release the series on DVD, which it did in December of 2005. Then on March 5th of 2009, Marvel began streaming the series on their website, and the character made his U.S. Comics debut in the Spider-Verse story of 2014. Which tells Spider-Men and women from alternate dimensions teaming up, and sure enough, this Spider-Man brought his Leopardon with him. For a note, yeah, definitely check out the series. It's a lot of fun and cheesy, but it honestly is a lot better than that American 1970s Spider-Man TV show. Another licensing venue for Spider-Man was Hostess, which he advertised for in 1975 to 1982 in the comics, with uncredited art by Ross Andrews, Sal Buscema, and George Kuska. Meanwhile, the Amazing Spider-Man newspaper strip finally launched on January 3, 1977, by Stan Lee and John Romita Sr. Lee always felt that comic strips were more prestigious than comic books as they reached more readers. Eventually, his brother Larry Lieber would take over the penciling for 18 years. It was soon established that the strip would have a separate continuity than the comic books, though when Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson got married in the comics, they did so with their newspaper counterparts. It would soon become one of the more popular strips in the papers, to the point where even President Ronald Reagan praised it, stating that when he read the paper, he liked to start with the light comic stuff first before reading the front page, and Spider-Man was one of his favorites. Pocket Books would release 2 mass-market collections of the strip in 1980, with Ballantine Books doing a 208-page collection in 1986. Sadly, it was announced the strip ended on March 23, 2019, shortly after the death of Stan Lee, though Roy Thomas had ghostwritten the strip since 2000. Back in the regular comic books, Amazing Spider-Man number 238 introduced a new villain, the Hobgoblin, created by Roger Stern and John Romita Sr., whose identity wouldn't be revealed to 245, similar to how the Green Goblin's identity was kept secret for many issues. Originally, he was Ned Leeds, a reporter and husband of Betty Brant, Peter Parker's high school girlfriend. However, Roger Stern hated this reveal and later corrected in the Spider-Man The Hobgoblin Lives miniseries of 1997, revealing him instead to be billionaire Roderick Kingsley, who was obsessed with the Hobgoblin. By issue number 290, Peter Parker proposed to Mary Jane, who accepted by issue number 292. Then in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 21 by Jim Shooter, David Michelin, Paul Ryan, and Vince Collette, they were married, with award-winning fashion designer Willie Smith designing Mary Jane's dress. This was further publicized when Stan Lee himself officiated a marriage between actors playing Spider-Man and Mary Jane at Shea Stadium on June 5, 1987, in which the Mets also beat the Pirates 5-1. Something that would especially make Peter Parker happy, as like many a kid growing up in Queens, he is a Mets fan. The media blitz was so huge it was covered by Good Morning America, Entertainment Tonight, and Sports Illustrated. Another big event that also happened to Spider-Man in the comics was Secret Wars, a 12-issue maxi-series event by Jim Shooter, Mike Zeck, and Bob Layden that ran from May 1984 to April of 1985. In the comic, numerous Marvel heroes and villains teleported to Battle World by the godlike Beyonder with a decree for them to fight each other. Spider-Man joined in Amazing Spider-Man number 251 in April of 1984. It was during this event that Peter Parker acquired the black symbiote suit in Secret Wars number 8, which would later be revealed to be alive by the Fantastic Four in Amazing Spider-Man number 258, written by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. Realizing the comic was taking control of him when he thought he was asleep, Peter Parker had Reed Richards remove its Sonics, with Sonics that and fire being the symbiote's weaknesses. And then Reed would keep it imprisoned in the Baxter Building while Spider-Man returned to his classic costume. However, in order to get home, he had to wear a discarded Fantastic Four suit along with a bag over his head because, well, the Fantastic Four don't have masks, resulting in another classic but less obscure Spider-Man costume. However, that would not be the last we would see of that symbiote. Previously, Friends illustrated the issue number 248 with the story The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man, written by Roger Stern, a classic one-issue story where Spider-Man visits a kid dying of leukemia. Spider-Man got another book with The Web of Spider-Man on April 1885, which came from the Marvel team-up, which had a past relationship with Black Cat Felicia Hardy, who he reveals his identity to her, only to be turned off by it. She prefers Spider-Man over Peter Parker, a classic dilemma for many superheroes. Though she did convince him to go back to wearing a new black costume, the original intent of Web of Spider-Man was for this series for the Spider-Man to wear it as a further tone to the darker nature of the stories. In fact, in the first issue, the symbiote returned, tracking Peter Parker down in hopes of rebonding with him. Spider-Man is able to rid himself of it again with the use of the sound of the church bells when he gets trapped in the church, but it would soon menace Spider-Man again in a different way. Continuing through Web of Spider-Man, it would feature a brief appearance of Venom in issue number 18, a new Hobgoblin in issue number 29, the first appearance of Tombstone in number 36, and the first solo story of the infamous Spider-Clone in issue number 118. Peter Parker's personal life got more complicated in the comic, as in Amazing Spider-Man number 257 on October 1984, when Mary Jane Watson revealed she always knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. This was further detailed in Spider-Man Parallel Lives graphic novel of September of 1990, which chronicled the parallel lives that Peter Parker and Mary Jane had over the years, revealing that MJ witnessed Peter change into Spider-Man at his Aunt May's house. Remember, her aunt lived right next door, and climb out the window to go after his Uncle Ben's killer. After MJ and Peter's marriage, they won't get much of a honeymoon, as the classic Kraven's The Last Hunt by J.M. DeMatteis and Mike Zett, a 6-issue crossover to all the Spidey books, featuring Web of Spider-Man number 31 and 32, Amazing Spider-Man number 293 and 294, and Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man number 131 and 132. In the story, Kraven ambushes Spider-Man and has him put into a coma, burying him alive while stealing his costume identity. Spidey would eventually escape and face Kraven in a one-on-one duel. At that point, Kraven finally realized Spider-Man's true heroism and chose to take his own life. The ending would be controversial, with many fans objecting to killing off a classic villain like Kraven. However, writer J.M. DeMatteis always countered that no one really cared about Kraven until The Last Hunt. You would think the title would give it away, and the ending was appropriate for the story. Like many comic book characters, though, Craven got better after his death. One of the more shocking stories in Spider-Man's history was the death of Jean DeWolf by writer Peter David and artist Rick Buckler